England, a small island sitting off the northwest coast of Europe. Today, it's known for Parliament, the royal family, and centuries of global influence. But wind the clock back a few hundred years, and you'll find a nation teetering on the edge of disaster. This wasn't a country united by peace, not even close. The streets of London were packed with merchants, apprentices, beggars, and soldiers. Smoke drifted from thousands of chimneys, while church bells echoed across the city every single day. Beyond the capital, villages carried on much as they had for generations. Farmers worked the land from dawn till dusk, hoping the harvest would be kind enough to see their families through another winter. Life was hard, really hard. Disease spread quickly. Food shortages weren't uncommon. Most ordinary folk had little say in how the kingdom was run. Decisions were made by wealthy nobles, bishops, and above all, the king. For centuries, English monarchs believed they ruled because God had chosen. After the death of Queen Elizabeth I in 1603, the Tudor dynasty came to an end. England now welcomed a new ruler from Scotland, King James VI of Scotland, who became James I of England. For the first time, one man ruled both kingdoms. James was clever, well-educated, fascinated by theology and royal authority, but there was one massive problem. He loved absolute power. Whenever Parliament questioned him, James brushed them aside. He firmly believed the king answers only to God. Now, Parliament wasn't exactly democratic by modern standards. Only wealthy landowners could vote, and ordinary people had virtually no voice. Even so, many members of Parliament believed the king's powers should have limits. James didn't fancy that idea one bit. Money soon became another major headache. Running a kingdom wasn't cheap. Wars, royal palaces, extravagant ceremonies, and the luxurious lifestyle of the court drained the treasury faster than taxes could refill it. Whenever James needed cash, Parliament expected concessions in return. James expected obedience. Neither side was willing to budge. Sound familiar? These arguments never truly disappeared. Instead, they simmered beneath the surface for years. When James died in 1625, his son Charles inherited the throne. King Charles I was every bit as convinced of royal authority as his father, perhaps even more so. Charles believed compromise was weakness. Parliament believed compromise was essential. That clash would change English history forever. Charles also married Henrietta Maria, a French Catholic princess. To many English Protestants, this raised serious concerns. Could a king simply ignore the law? Could anyone truly possess unlimited power? Those questions spread through taverns, marketplaces, churches, and homes. Bit by bit, public opinion began to shift. Then Charles made what many historians consider his biggest mistake. In 1629, after another bitter dispute, he dismissed Parliament altogether. For 11 years, he ruled entirely on his own. This period became known as the personal rule. Supporters called it efficient. Critics called it tyranny. Without Parliament, Charles found new ways to raise money. Fines increased. Old laws were revived. Taxes multiplied. Every fresh demand made resentment grow. Yet finances weren't Charles's only problem. Religion was becoming explosive. The king wanted greater uniformity within the Church of England. His Archbishop of Canterbury, William Laud, introduced reforms that many Protestants believed looked suspiciously Catholic. Church interiors became more elaborate, ceremonies became grander, strict religious rules were enforced. Puritans hated every minute of it. They believed England was drifting away from true Protestant worship. Some even left England entirely. Across the Atlantic Ocean, thousands sailed towards North America, hoping to build communities where they could worship freely. Back home, tensions continued rising. Then, Charles made another catastrophic decision. He attempted to impose English-style religious reforms on Scotland. The Scots weren't having any of it. Not a chance. Riots erupted. Church services descended into chaos. Legend tells of a woman named Jenny Geddes throwing a stool at the minister during one service. Whether entirely true or not, the story perfectly captures the mood. Scotland rebelled. Charles suddenly needed an army. Armies cost money. Money meant Parliament. After 11 years without one, Charles reluctantly summoned Parliament once again. Members arrived expecting reforms. Charles expected cash. The arguments resumed almost immediately. Neither side trusted the other anymore. Within weeks, Charles dissolved Parliament again. People nicknamed it the Short Parliament. It had lasted barely a month. The king still lacked money. The Scots continued advancing south. Charles had no choice. Later that same year, he summoned Parliament again. This time, everything would change. The Long Parliament had begun, and England was now edging ever closer to civil war. The kingdom stood divided. By the autumn of 1640, England had reached breaking point. King Charles I had finally called Parliament back into session, but not because he wanted peace. He needed money. His failed campaign against Scotland had emptied the royal treasury, and without Parliament's approval, he had no easy way of raising fresh funds. Parliament knew it held the stronger hand. This time, members weren't prepared to hand over cash without demanding major changes first. Instead of approving taxes, they launched investigations into the king's closest advisors. One by one, powerful royal officials found themselves accused of corruption and abuse of power. The biggest target of all was Thomas Wentworth, Earl of Strafford. Strafford had been one of Charles's most loyal supporters. A capable administrator and fierce defender of royal authority, he believed the king should rule without interference. To Parliament, he represented everything that had gone wrong. After months of bitter debate, Strafford was arrested and charged with treason. People feared the king might use force to rescue Strafford. Eventually, Charles gave in. Reluctantly, he signed the warrant. In May 1641, Strafford was executed. As the axe fell, Charles watched one of his strongest allies disappear forever. Many later believed this was the moment the king lost faith in compromise. If Parliament could destroy his closest advisor, who would be next? The relationship between king and Parliament was now poisoned beyond repair. Meanwhile, another crisis erupted across the Irish Sea. In Ireland, a violent rebellion broke out. Thousands of Protestant settlers were attacked by Catholic rebels. Stories of horrific massacres spread across England. Some accounts were exaggerated, others entirely false, but fear doesn't wait for facts. Panic swept the country. Everyone agreed an army was needed. The question was simple: who should control it? Charles believed the army belonged to the crown. Parliament believed giving the king command would be disastrous. Neither side trusted the other. The argument became impossible to solve. As months passed, London itself became increasingly divided. Royal supporters, known as Cavaliers, defended the king's authority. Many were wealthy landowners and members of the traditional aristocracy. Opposing them stood the parliamentarians, often called Roundheads because of their short hairstyles. Their supporters included merchants, craftsmen, Puritans, and many people living in the rapidly growing towns. The divide wasn't always clear-cut. Families argued over dinner tables. Neighbors stopped speaking to one another. Brothers sometimes found themselves supporting opposite sides. England wasn't simply splitting politically. It was tearing itself apart. Then came one of the greatest political blunders in British history. In January 1642, Charles entered the House of Commons with armed soldiers. His goal was shocking. He intended to arrest 5 members of Parliament whom he accused of treason. Never before had an English king marched into Parliament like this. The chamber fell silent. Charles looked around. The 5 men had already escaped. Both insisted they were acting in the nation's best interests. Neither believed war could be avoided any longer. On the 22nd of August, 1642, Charles stood on a hill overlooking Nottingham. A royal standard was raised high into the sky. It was more than a flag. It was a declaration of war. The English Civil War had begun. At first, neither army looked particularly impressive. Most soldiers had never fought before. Farmers left their fields. Blacksmiths picked up muskets. Shopkeepers became cavalrymen. Young lads, eager for adventure, enlisted beside seasoned veterans who had fought across Europe. Training was rushed. Equipment was often poor. Many soldiers brought their own clothes and weapons. Uniforms barely existed.